think enough people talk about how hard it is to make friends as an adult, especially in your late 20s and your 30s. And I'm not talking about surface level friendships or the girl or the guy that you occasionally hang out with. I'm talking about community, girlhood, deep connections. One of the biggest things that I've realized is proximity does not equal compatibility. Just because you have people around you does not mean that they are aligned with you, especially when it comes to our earlier friendships, and I mean high school and college. You may have naturally became connected to these people because of classes, clubs, or playing the same sport. And those are the first friendships I've noticed that tend to fizzle out as we get into adulthood because you don't have those common interests to rely on anymore. Those are usually the friendships where you experience your first heartbreak and they were there for you, or you got your first job, or your driver's license, or maybe you had your first girl trip or guy trip. Those are the friendships that are actually trickier to navigate when they start to fizzle out because you thought that they would be around for a while. But as we become adults and life starts to happen, you realize that you have to be the one to go out and choose your people. You have to be more intentional, and we naturally start to make connections based off of where we are in life. Another thing I've been thinking a lot about is the direct correlation between self-love and friendships. When you love yourself, pour into yourself, hype yourself up, date yourself, get to know yourself, that will be reflected in your friendships, how you show up for people, the sort of people that you attract. We talk a lot about this in romantic relationships, but it is just as important in your friendships. I know you all have heard the saying, you are the company that you keep, and your friends are the company that you keep. So it's so important to be intentional and aligned with those connections, because that's the thing. When you pour into yourself, your standards change, what you tolerate change, and what normal feels like changes. One of the biggest things I've also realized about friendships, it's not just about finding the right people or choosing the right people, it's also about looking inward, understanding yourself, your thoughts, your patterns. And honestly, therapy is one of the things that has helped me the most with this, which is why I want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. Therapy helped me to understand patterns, decide how I want to show up in my friendships, in my relationships, and it also helped me to form different perspectives. I think there's something so helpful about having someone reflect things back to you that you may have missed had you tried to do it on your own. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform, which means you're able to get matched with a licensed therapist in as little as 2 days. And I know what you're thinking, what if I get matched with a therapist and we're not the right fit? BetterHelp is really intentional, and they make it easy for you to switch to a new therapist at no additional cost. Not only does therapy help you with relationships, it helps you with clarity and self-awareness, especially if you've been feeling stuck or a bit disconnected. If you've been wanting to understand yourself better or form more healthier, sustainable relationships, go to betterhelp.com/Amina for 10% off your first month of therapy. I think it's a really easy way to start, especially if you've been thinking about it. As we get into our late 20s, our 30s, and beyond, we or our friends may be in different life stages. Different things take priority. You may have an elderly or sick parent. You're prioritizing growing in your career, your long-term relationships, or your marriages. You may be prioritizing your children, travel. We all have different life paths and interests, and as a result, time just disappears. And it doesn't mean that you love your friend any less or they love you any less. It's just a matter of capacity. Interestingly enough, there was research done, I believe it's called Dunars Numbers, Don't quote me on the name. I'll put it right here. But it says that we are capable of having 150 connections, with only a small amount of those being friendships. So I'm talking 3 to 5 close or inner circle connections, and then 15 connections that you keep up with regularly. And it makes so much sense to me because considering time, considering family, relationship, career, and just like general interests that we may have, we are literally not capable of having 10 or more close, intimate connections. And that brings me to my next point, which is low effort slash busy culture. Now, there's exceptions to this. I'm not talking about people who are going through life transitions. Like, obviously, things happen in life, but I want to speak specifically about people who take the term low effort, no effort friend and run with it. I personally feel like it's a cop out. And if you're not familiar, that term basically means that someone doesn't require a lot of maintenance and they also don't give a lot of maintenance in their friendships. So this can look like not speaking to said friend for weeks or months. This can look like that friend only coming to you when they need something. Like, we're not doing that in 2026, okay? The low effort, no effort friends obviously may work for some people. And I know I can't be the only one that feels like that. Like, while I can understand that we all have things going on, I cannot go months without hearing from my friend. At that point, you're an acquaintance. The research actually backs that up. That ties into my next point, where I feel like it's so important to check in with your friendships and to notice if there's any misalignments, because again, priorities change. Your priority may change when it comes to that friendship or vice versa. So the next point I have is communication slash emotional blocks. We focus so heavily on this in romantic relationships. Everyone's talking about communication. Communication is key in a relationship. But what about your friendships? They're almost as equally yoked. So it's like, hey, you have to express what you need out of a friendship, and in turn, you have to ask your friends to communicate what they need from you. One of the things that I've been doing that I think is so different, and if you do this, then great, we're on the same page, but basically asking my friends what their love language is. Think about how rich it would be if you can love your friend in their love language. You could be someone that prefers quality time, but they prefer acts of service. So that means you doing something for them, and vice versa. If they know your love language, they'll know like, hey, this is a girly or guy. We can watch movies, we can sit at the park, we can sit on the couch and do nothing, both scrolling on our phones, but she values quality time. I value this. We understand each other and we love each other in that language. It's not only for romantic relationships, and I wish more people knew this and embraced this. Again, when I talk about friendships, I'm referring to community and sisterhood. We don't get to choose our family, but we do get to choose our friends and our spouse. So I'm just going about it a little bit more intentionally moving forward. Another part of emotional blocks and communication is the fact that a lot of us don't talk to our friends like we would talk to a spouse or to a family member. Like, let's say your friend says something that makes you feel a little uncomfy. Instead of voicing or communicating that it made you feel uncomfy, you kind of brush it to the side. And that person unknowingly or knowingly keeps repeating or saying that thing where it comes up again. And now you start to drift apart. But if you had just communicated, or vice versa, if that person had just communicated, you could have dealt with the issue. A lot of us try to avoid conflict, and it's something that I'm working on just in all of my relationships, where I'm being very intentional about what I say. And in general, if we have a conversation and I notice that, hey, my friend's a little withdrawn, I'm checking in like, hey, did I say something, or are you okay? Checking in is so important. So that's one of the things I had to mention here, is that a lot of us try to avoid conflict, where conflict can actually make your friendship or connection stronger. And just like we spoke about earlier, it is never a comfy feeling, but I do believe that you can't build or maintain or grow friendships from a version of you that does not exist, or a version of you that's completely different. Like we spoke about this in previous videos, but the people pleasing era, it had to come to an end. And by people pleasing, I mean stopping everything that you're doing to show up, be present, be the listening ear for your friends. It's not an excuse to not show up and not be a good friend, obviously. Like, there's balance and there's duality, but I think it's so important to realize that you're the priority, and if you can show up, you show up. If you can't, you can't. You can't be that person who shows up at the detriment of your mental or even your physical health. I just wanted to sprinkle that reminder in there. Those are only a few reasons as to why friendships don't work out. Obviously, you know your situation best, and I am happy to chat it up with you in the comments, or you can send me a DM. But if it's been harder for you to make or maintain friendships, you are not alone. And it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. You might just be in a phase where you're becoming more intentional and more aware about the kinds of friendships that you want. I personally believe that a lot of us just need to make the first move, whether that's sending a girly a DM or joining a class or a club or a group. You can't always wait for community to come to you. You have to go and find community. But I'm curious, comment down below, because I want to know, am I the only one that's experiencing transitions in my adult friendships? Not that anything bad is happening per se, but just like the ups and downs, or like realizing that you have to be more intentional, like you actually have to set time aside. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It requires effort, just like any other relationship. Let me know down below.